Question one is, how do you find technology? How do you define technology? Is it good, evil, useful? Or
I would think it's really useful. I feel like technology connects us to a wealth of information, and as a teacher especially, I think that's exciting.
Question two is technology useful in your classroom? If so, how?
Well, definitely. We do a lot of research and looking up different things on the two laptops that we have in here. That's been really helpful. If one gets bored or something, we really notice that it's missing because we use them so often. I think even when we're talking about projectors or some of the other pieces of technology. I mean, we've got some plants growing in here, and we're using some lighting for that. So even that's potentially technology, right? So there are a lot of different things that we use on a daily basis that are really helpful.
Question four is, or question three, I guess. Do you prefer going like old style when you run into trouble? Like, do you use a dictionary, or do you immediately go to like Google or a phone or something for it?
Definitely, I would say that using books or kind of old school resources are a great way to start. It's a great place to start from, and it gives you some ideas. Then when you're searching on the internet, or if you're looking through some online encyclopedias, you've got some ideas of the specific things to search. You've got an idea of what you're looking for already, because if you just go in not really having done some of that research beforehand, there's so much information that you can look at that it can be pretty confusing.
Question four is, what comes to your mind when you catch a student on class? Like, what's your first thought?
Like on their phone in class? I'm ticked off. I want them to put it away. Because for the most part, we don't use cell phones for research and for learning, but definitely there's a time and a place for it. But for, I would say 90% of the time during class time, they're not using it for class purposes.
Do you think cell phones are a good idea in the classroom?
I think that they could definitely serve a purpose. But for the most part, I think that they end up being a little bit more of a distraction than they end up being helpful.
Why do you think some teachers are having such a hard time accepting the cell phones and technology in class?
Because they're a distraction, and what ends up happening is that we're trying to learn something, and we're trying to be 100% focused on the lesson. So whether the teacher is standing in front of the class talking, or whether we're doing an activity, or whether you need to be doing an experiment or something like that, often people use their cell phones to be texting their friends or to be looking something up online, and they're not really engaged in what they're learning. And as teachers, that's what we want. We want our students to be engaged in the things that we're doing in class.
What do you think would be a way to bring cell phones and technology into class?
Well, I guess when students are doing some inquiry learning, they can use their cell phones to look some things up on the internet if they don't have computers. They could maybe do some brainstorming with other people. I don't know, it depends what those other people are doing, right? And whether they should be in class or not, if they should be using theirs. But you can definitely communicate back and forth and ask a lot of questions, contact a lot of different people that way.
So how do you define technology? Is it like good, evil, useful in the classroom?
Oh, I would say very useful. I think about technology in the classroom, even simple things that some people wouldn't consider, like manipulatives or calculators. And then we've got things like cell phones and smart boards to use as well. But I would completely and utterly say that technology is vital to education.
So you do agree with cell phone use in
Yes,
class?
but I think we need to do a much better job of teaching students how to use some technology responsibly. But other than that, no, I think it's planned use.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. All right, carry on.
Okay, good.
So how do you define technology? Like, is it good, bad?
I'm a definite supporter of technology just because I've grown up with it. So I think it's great. I'm not one of those people that is really against technology in the classroom or anything like that. So no, I'm a big supporter of technology.
Is technology useful in your classroom?
Yeah, I think it is. I think it's becoming more and more useful as people kind of understand it a little more. Being a sub right now, though, I kind of at the mercy of the teacher whether or not it's being used in the classroom, and I just kind of go along with that. So, but for me, if I have my own classroom, I would definitely use technology.
Do you prefer going old style when in trouble, or do you turn to technology for help?
Well, I pretty much turn to Google for anything. So I would say I definitely turn to technology if I'm in trouble or need some help with the lesson.
What comes to mind when you catch a student on their cell phone in class?
Well, my only problem with the students on cell phones in class is that it's not being used for getting answers kind of thing. It's being used to text their friends and stuff. It's more of a distraction than anything. So I guess I'm not a fan of having cell phones allowed in the classroom.
Do you think cell phones are a good idea in the classroom?
Well, I kind of just answered that. No, I actually don't, and I'm not a fan of cells in the classroom for the same thing I just said. I find it's distracting as opposed to helping students learn.
Why do you think some teachers are having a hard time accepting technology in classrooms?
Well, I'd say probably because if you don't understand the technology, then you're probably going to lean to not using it. So I think with maybe some more practice or some learning with the technology, they'd be a lot better off.
How can technology be used in the classroom?
Well, technology can be used for students to get more in depth about different topics. It can be used as a networking tool, so students can connect to the people or the things that they're learning about, or they can use it to find information from peers or share back and forth. Technology also allows students to engage in more hands-on learning. And then the final thing is I see a big cost savings with technology as we move forward into the future. You look at the price of textbooks. If we could have mobile devices for students, you could save a lot of money from having to run print materials. Plus, information is way more up to date. So those are a couple of the reasons.
Our third question is, do you prefer going like old style using dictionaries and stuff like that, or when you're in trouble like that, do you turn to technology to help you?
You know what? I've always had a tough time turning to dictionaries and stuff like that. Print, even like looking at phone books. I do everything online. So, in terms of right from spelling, when I'm using Word, I use a spell check to looking up words into sources or dictionaries. It's all online. It's way quicker. It's way faster. Same thing finding phone numbers or addresses or looking on a map. Or I use a GPS on my phone. So I'd say definitely using technology speeds things up and makes it a lot more fun.
Our fourth question is, what comes to your mind when you catch a student using their phone in class?
I think that the first thing when you catch a student using their phone in class is, are the students following the expectations of the teacher? And I think this kind of question leads us to thinking that I think technology should be used in classrooms. Cell phones should be used in classrooms, but we have to have responsible use by the students. If the students can't use things respectfully and in the way the teachers are asking, you know what, then it makes it tough for breaking that barrier of allowing this technology into all classrooms. So the biggest thing is developing that, not trust, but developing the protocol so staff and students both understand how we're using it, why we're using it, why it's important, and ultimately the students have to be responsible for using it acceptably.
Our fifth question is, do you think cell phones would be a good idea in a classroom?
I think any sort of technology in the classroom is good if it's serving a purpose. Like I said before, in a different question, if we're using technology for the sake of technology, we're wasting ourselves a lot of money and a lot of time. But if there's a specific purpose that's going to help students learn, absolutely it should be used.
Okay. Why do you think some teachers are having a hard time accepting the technology in the classroom?
I think first and foremost, anytime you try something new or integrate new technology, it's a little bit scary for teachers that have been teaching it a certain way. Second thing, it's just in terms of how are students using the technology. You could have students that are doing things that are inappropriate on their cell phones, which can be a little bit scary as well. So I think the big thing is working with students, and when teachers are learning alongside students, I think that's powerful not just for the students, but it's powerful for the teacher as well.
What do you think are some of the new good ways that we can use technology in the classroom?
I think number one, it's changing learning to more of a constructive process, and instead of information being passed down to students, students are becoming critical consumers. They're also able to learn things in more depth and able to connect with other students through networking throughout the world, sharing ideas, sharing concepts, coming up with new ideas.